Welcome to the genitive case. Genitive! Okay, so what is it? First of all, it is the case in Latin that's used to show possession. If you've forgotten what a case is, remember that's the way a noun in Latin is spelled depending on how it's being used in a sentence. So any noun in Latin that is going to show possession will be spelled in a specific way, and that way is said to be the genitive case. I always like to start in English whenever we're talking about grammatical concepts, which might be a little abstract. So just look at these three sentences right here. We went to Clemen's house. That building is the temple of Caesar. The student's book was missing. All of these bold-faced words here indicate some sort of possession, and if we were to translate those into Latin, the bold-faced words, in other words, the person who owns the thing, would be in the genitive case, right? Not the thing itself, but rather the person who owns it. Okay, so now that we have defined the genitive case, the case used to show possession, we have to think about, well, how am I going to recognize it in a Latin sentence? So here we are, the genitive endings for the first, second, and third declensions. As elsewhere in the first declension, you've got A's, which will help you out. So you've got AE in the singular and then ARUM in the plural. The second declension, if you'll notice on your noun chart, it does have some O's in it, which shows up here in the genitive plural, orum. The genitive singular, though, is the long I here, pronounced E. And then third declension, singular, you've got IS and then UM. So, how do I then translate it? Well, the genitive is translated into English using the word of, as in the temple of Caesar, or you can simply add an apostrophe S to the end of a word, or if it already ends in S, then simply add an apostrophe. So, we know what it is, we know how to recognize it in Latin, we know how to translate it. Let's look at it in full-fledged Latin sentences so that you can see. Here's the first one. Juvenes puerique ad tabernam mercatoris contenderunt. Well, I see that some young men and boys hurried to the shop of the merchant. So there we go. Mercatoris, the person who owns the shop, will be in the genitive case, third declension, IS, genitive singular. Look at our second example. Omnes nautae pro templo Neptuni stabant. All of the sailors were standing in front of the temple of Neptune, or you could say in front of Neptune's temple. And here we have a second declension genitive singular ending. How about number 3? Multae naves in portu Alexandriae sunt. There are many ships in the port of Alexandria, or in Alexandria's port would be another way of saying it. And here, Alexandriae, we have a first declension genitive singular noun. And finally, look at number 4. Quintus per multitudinem servorum contendit. Quintus hurried through the crowd of slaves. ORUM, genitive plural, second declension. What do you guys notice about where the genitive noun comes in the sentence? Now you might have noticed that it typically comes toward the end of the sentence, but more importantly, it comes right after the noun that it is possessing. And that's a standard rule of Latin word order. So, as always, there's a song to help you remember. I'm sure you guys know the tune. Yankee Doodle went to town riding on a pony. Stuck a feather in his cap and called it macaroni, which makes no sense. But anyway, so the way that this song is going to go, we've got the first declension, second declension, third declension, genitive singular endings. We have the name of the case right here. And then first, second, third declension, genitive plural endings. And finally, I tell you what it's used for. So it goes something like this. AEIIS, it's the genitive. Aurum, is plural, it's possessive. And we'll practice that quite a bit in class. Now, what else is important? A couple of things. From now on, your textbook is going to list nouns in this way. The nominative singular will come first. That's no change. But here's where the change occurs. For the longest time, your book has been listing the accusative singular as the second part of a noun. But that will disappear, and from here on out, the genitive singular will actually be the second part of the noun listed. Then you'll see a letter following, M, F, or N, and that's for the gender, masculine, feminine, or neuter, and then of course finally the definition. Well, how else is the genitive case important? Two more ways. The genitive singular ending is the definitive way of telling a noun's declension. Now some of you are going to be like, well, what? I mean, hello, look at this first one, ankilla. Dude, ankilla, it ends in an A in the nominative singular. I know that's first declension. Well, sure. First declension is full of A's, right? So ankilla, ankillai, I look at that genitive singular AE, but I've already figured out it's a first declension noun. But check out these next two. Dominus, you know from last year, is a second declension noun. You might have known that because of the US in the nominative singular, but you know it for sure because of the way that the genitive singular ends, domini, with that I, which makes it second declension, as in A-E-I, I-S, it's the genitive. Look at this third example, virtus, but then look at the genitive singular, virtutis. If you were going too fast and you just looked at the nominative singular, you might assume that virtus, just like dominus, is a second declension noun. But by looking at the genitive singular ending, you see that it's is, and therefore this noun, virtus, virtutis, is really a third declension noun. So that's very, very important to pay attention to, especially next stage when we learn the fourth and fifth declensions, and you'll see why when we get there. Last thing about the genitive case, it provides you with the noun's stem. In other words, the stem that you then add on the other endings depending on how the noun's being used in the sentence. So, for example, taking virtus, virtutis. If I wanted to make virtus accusative singular, how would I do it? Well, I would take the genitive singular, which is virtutis. I would chop off the genitive singular ending, and I'm left with this bold-faced thing here, virtut. That is the official stem of the noun. This is what I add the other endings to. And I know from my songs the accusative singular for third declension is em, so I just add em to the end of virtut, my noun stem, which again I got by chopping off the genitive singular. Okay, that's it. Hope it wasn't too painful. I really like you guys.